Next item on the agenda is the mayor's statement on desire for respect and inclusion in our public discourse. So, over the past couple of months, I have received a lot of input from the community members about the events surrounding the cancellation of the Roaring Twenties drag event by Lost Coast Pride, addressing anti-hate, inclusion, and acceptance. I've received requests to the City Council by resolution to condemn certain viewpoints and or support other viewpoints. Alternatively, others have requested that the City Council do nothing on the basis that this is not the role of local government to involve itself in such matters or otherwise control speech. In my view, each request has some degree of merit, and I can understand why such request would be made. However, speaking for myself, I do not believe it is appropriate for the City Council to condemn one viewpoint or support another viewpoint. That is not the role of local government. I also don't believe that the City Council should do nothing, as some have urged. Instead, I believe the city should continue to ensure that its ordinances, actions, conduct, and policies made in a manner that is consistent with the values embodied in our own code of ethics, which we each agree to abide by, as well as the state and federal laws and constitution, which we all took an oath to uphold. In 2021, the council adopted a revised code of ethics. This revised code of ethics reflects the city's commitment to ensuring fair and equal treatment of all persons. In fact, in the very first section, Section A.1, provides that members will assure fair and equal treatment of all persons in claims and transactions coming before them, regardless of race, religion, age, or gender. These are our values as a city council, and in upholding our values as city council, we hope to lead by example. In closing, I hope that our community members feel free to passionately discuss and debate matters important to them without fear of reprisals. Above all, though, I hope that we, as a community, will prioritize kindness, inclusion, and respect for our fellow community members and visitors, above all when having those debates and in all other aspects of our daily lives. I thank my fellow council members for their indulgence. Before I open this issue for public comments, I invite my colleagues on the council to speak on the topic if they wish. Bill? Jenny?
I want to thank the mayor. I want to assure the public that we take our sworn oath of office and our code of ethics and responsibility seriously. You elected us to do so. We've listened carefully to you. We've read your diverse opinions. I've had several citizens question me as to how can people who are so giving to others, like the people in Ferndale who help others in time of need, how can these good people be told to be kind by the city council when they are already kind? I have struggled for many hours to formulate an answer. All I can say is that when a Ferndale citizen stood right there in January and told the council that someone yelled faggot to him on Main Street, I was devastated. Later, another citizen said to me, "No one's ever yelled that to me." And I said, "They have not to me either, but someone did to him." And that is his truth. So yes, many people are kind and giving, but it doesn't hurt any of us to be reminded that we are not all treated equally based on our race, our religion, our age, or our gender. My truth, my opinion, and my basic core belief, after having a California teaching credential for 43 years, is I firmly believe that all people should be treated equally, fairly, justly, regardless of their race, religion, their age, or their gender. And I would like to see a written piece put on our agenda as a statement endorsed by our city council.
So I was on the previous council, when we, were presented with this, issue back in August or September of 2021. At that time, the council, we discussed it, and at that time, that's when we kind of went over this, revised the current, code of ethics that we have here, and that's when that was done. I've talked, this has become a real passionate thing with the community. I understand that. We've been going through this now since January, actually since 2021, to be honest with you. And like Jenny says, it is upsetting. I wish that we didn't have these issues. We do, and I think that's why we have law enforcement. When those issues come up, we need to have law enforcement. If they're illegal, that's the role of law enforcement. That's the role of the police department, the DA's office. Just like back in 2021, I think that's the reason that we did this revise this code of ethics. And I support what the mayor read in his statement. Thank you.
Skip?
Yes. I've said or read some of this before, but I will read it again so my position is understood. The resolution of inclusion was written not with drag shows or marquees in mind, but with the intent of providing assurance that regardless of the color of one's skin, ancestry, their religious belief, their gender identity, or sexual orientation, that it will be the intent that in this community we will continue to practice kindness and respect for those of differing thought or feeling, even though we may not agree with that belief or that lifestyle. To otherwise berate or demean only results in animosity and conflict. Over the years, I have been aware of those in our community who have felt disadvantaged because of the color of their skin, or the teenager struggling with acceptance over gender identity. I can see their faces. Some of you can see their faces. We can't say how they feel, but we know that they should not feel discrimination, disadvantage, judgment, ridicule, or hurt. They should be provided the assurance that they are given the respect that any citizen or visitor receives. That is why this resolution was adapted from what I felt was a more negative resolution already approved at the county level. It is not a law to be upheld or a limitation on speech. It is simply an assurance for those who may not feel so sure of themselves. You cannot assume there's more to it. I have shared the resolution of inclusion with the council, and I advocate for its placement on an agenda.
move on to public comments.
You know, having heard and lived with this now for a couple of months, I don't think that it doesn't appear to be that a resolution of inclusion, which was previously not on the agenda, would appear on a forthcoming agenda. I may be wrong. I do accept the mayor's statement on fair and equal treatment of all persons as a model for our community. All persons. More importantly, and more important to me, we have listened and worked for resolution, and that attitude of respect and compromise is much needed, though often absent in our institutions today. So I thank the fellow council members. I know we all feel there is other business we would like to deal with.
If two council members want something on the agenda, what's the process?
They contact City Hall and say that they would
Okay.
like to put it on. Normally those councilmen present at the next meeting, appropriate meeting.
Okay.
And that's,
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the council?
So I'm at the point of either withdrawing the resolution or postponing if there are people considering asking that a resolution be put on the agenda. Current or an improved.
Could we put a draft resolution or a draft something? I feel like we need to have something on the agenda so that, because now we've said something, but it's not really officially, we haven't had a vote.
Right.
So, if we put something on an agenda, does it have to be, like, could it have like a first reading, a second reading? Can it be edited, or when you give something, is that the final copy?
I'm not exactly sure
Okay.
of that, but you,
Or maybe a study session?
Or could we have
A study session, so that, because the public is invited to a study session, they're not closed sessions, they're study sessions. So maybe a study session with that as the topic?
that or a special meeting with just that to
As the
focus
topic.
on.
Okay,
And you can, at that meeting, continue it, as long as you want, really.
okay. So, does it need to be something in writing, or we just call you? Or just come by? Or can we say it now?
I think, something written down, it
Okay.
doesn't have to be long, would be satisfactory.
Okay.
You know, we can just go through the process and see how it works out.
And I also want to say that people have said, why are you guys talking about this? Well, we have the Brown Act, so we don't really know what each other thinks, because we can't talk about it. So this is the first time that we've talked about this. So we've listened and we've read, and we have not discussed it, so we don't really know what each other thinks. This is our first time, because we're following the Brown Act, which is for your protection, so that you know what we're talking about.
So this council, and every 2 years we have a change up. So for this council, it's the first time they've deliberated about this, and you deliberate in public, not behind the scenes, so that the public can see what's happening. It has been attended to a number of times with other administrations, but you want to put your own mark on it and say, this is the way we feel. I would suggest that we don't want to have this every meeting, although it's nice to have the company. But we would like to see something, solid.
Yes.
Or the community would, if that makes you feel good, we can do that.
So we could do a study session, or could we ask two members of the council to get together and work to develop a template? Say,
I've got enough rough drafts to fill her tonnage. So,
No, contract. So it should be a special meeting so that you can vote.
I think it's,
Study session, you can't vote.
okay, that sounds good, your idea sounds good. That's okay.
okay, we'll set up a special meeting
And we'll contact you to find out what day.
Okay.
It won't be a regular meeting day, probably.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, thank you.
thank you, Jay. Thank you, Skip. Any other comments from the council before we move forward? Okay, first public speaker, Stuart. Okay, just remember, it's a 3-minute time limit, the clerk is timing, so when our alarm goes off, you're not done.
I will do my best, okay?
Thank you.
And I'm grateful two people stepped forward. I'm Stuart Altshuler. So I want to say gaslighting is an action of repetitively lying to someone to manipulate and ultimately control them and the relationship. It could be divided into different types, but I'm referring right now to outright lying and manipulation of reality. Whether it is called an anti-hate resolution or an inclusion resolution, there are people in Ferndale who are trying to gaslight the city council and residents of Ferndale into believing that passing such a statement will somehow impinge on their rights to freedom of speech and freedom of religion. This is outright lying or manipulation of reality to suit their own desires. The city council must not give in to such pressure. A resolution is not a law or ordinance. A resolution does nothing to remove their rights to worship as they choose or post whatever signs they want, short of encouraging unstable people to commit violence against others. I repeat, a resolution is not a law or ordinance that will impede anyone's right to freedom of speech or religion. The issue is no longer about drag shows. That issue was resolved when the show was canceled and 2 separate ones were produced, one more for children and one adult. Gaslighting, again, that this discussion now says that we're supporting child abuse because we're discussing drag shows. We're not discussing drag shows anymore. In the March 16th edition of the Ferndale Enterprise, under the police blotter for Ferndale, the following was listed, quote, "A disturbance was reported on A Street where a man said his former neighbor came out of the residence and began yelling racial slurs at him while he was doing his yard work," unquote. In my time living in Ferndale, going back 16 years, there have been incidents at the high school with Confederate flags, blackface, and other things. All offensive behaviors, not just to African American people, but to all minorities. Offensive to many not identified as part of a minority group, but also to aware and compassionate citizens everywhere who believe all people have the right to live in safe communities and with a sense of respect and dignity. I guess that makes me woke. That is something I am proud to say about myself. It is not a derogatory label. When I first moved to Ferndale in 2007, I endured similar attacks and fear when I applied for a home occupation permit for my practice as a psychotherapist. I had to endure very public shaming then and wrote the following, in part, letter to the editor. Quote, "That meeting was unlike anything I have ever experienced before, and that includes 3 gay bashing experiences I've had the misfortune to be on the receiving end of. The last meeting was gay bashing in its most obscene. It was public and allowed to take place by the very body of government officials who are sworn to protect all the citizens of Ferndale. So while the city of Ferndale finally did the right thing and approved my permit, the damage it did to this community and is still in the consciousness of people all over Humboldt, I am still recognized as, quote, the gay therapist who Ferndale abused. Believe it or not, people are still saying that. And I always have to correct them with the next part of that letter that I wrote back then. Quote, but personally I am overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support I have received from the vast majority of Ferndaleers as well as people all over Humboldt County. The room in Ferndale City Hall was packed that Monday night. The vast majority were there to support me. When the 4-1 vote was taken with the result in my favor, I left the room and broke into tears of relief and gratitude. I am humbled to be so embraced by my new home and community. I am warmed by your love and acceptance. I pledge to you that I will do everything in my power to be worthy of that acceptance and trust. I have never wavered from my love and faith in Ferndale, and I pledge to you my every effort to be a positive role model, a valuable citizen, and a good neighbor to all. Please do not reward bigotry in this community. This is not about signs or anything else. What you mentioned had to do with your own individual code of ethics as city council people. It is not a statement to the Humboldt County greater community or people in Ferndale who really are offended by things that are being done and said by a small group of people. It's two different things. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Kim McCandless.
Thanks, City Council. I grew up here. I was raised here from age 1 to 18 and then relocated back to Ferndale from ages 30 to 41. Looking at relocating into Ferndale proper, so I have particular interest in seeing policies that benefit everyone. I think that an anti-hate or an inclusion resolution that's been passed throughout the nation and locally would be appropriate. It's not a reaction to any individual. It's just a rejection of hateful ideology. And I would just urge the council to think how you would feel if you were being attacked. For me, I have a mental health diagnosis. So for me, it's where does it stop? And what will we allow in terms of bigotry or discrimination? And maybe eventually someone you care for is affected. For me also, for instance, attacks on LGBTQ individuals are hateful. I've been very passionate about those close to me and their identities my entire life. I count some of my absolute closest people as identifying as such. And again, as someone navigating mental health challenges, I can speak to what it feels like to be underrepresented at times. And again, I would say, love your neighbors, respect their choices, respect their needs. And I very much appreciate space carved out for this discussion. But ultimately, if action is not taken to protect those vulnerable, I don't think that the council wants to be on that side of history. I do hope for more. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Andy Westfall?
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. There are a number of well-meaning people that support the anti-hate inclusion resolution recently brought before our city council for consideration. I suggest that proclamations of virtue such as this have not and will not enlighten any of the handful of dark hearts that may be in our community. Instead, they only serve to create division. Many Ferndalers have taken offense to the intimidation and insinuation that by not embracing this resolution, are something other than who we are. Some of the kindest, most generous and loving folks you will find anywhere. Let us move on. Thank you.
Dave Gilmer.
I wasn't clear from your comments whether you're voting on this tonight or you're continuing it for some later time.
We're gonna have a special meeting that's open to the public and come up with a,
My understanding from the literature was that it was going to be on the agenda tonight, to be voted on tonight.
what was on the agenda was bringing the issue,
So you're
was
gonna
what
continue.
we did. It wasn't about putting a resolution on the agenda.
Let me ask, have you all seen and read my letter that I delivered today? Yeah. I won't repeat then what I put in my letter, but it just seems to me that all of this issue has come up from the signs that Pastor Bramwell put up on his church. None of this would have come up if there wasn't a reaction to his free speech, his protected religious free speech. None of this would have come up in an ordinary sense. Of course, we need to obey laws, respect one another, et cetera, et cetera. But all of this was precipitated by those comments of protected free speech by church clergy. And it seems to me that the response has been to somehow, as I said in my letter, to silence, punish, censor, do something to say this is not appropriate, you can't do this. However you want to phrase the resolution. I've heard it called an anti-hate resolution, and I've heard it an inclusive resolution that maybe soften the language. But all of these attempts, and even whatever you're going to do in the self-study, is in a sense to punish, silence, and cancel what was done by free speech. And you have my letter there with my reasons. I think this is really inappropriate for a city council. It doesn't need to be done. And I've already stated how serious I feel this is, that you're taking one side of this argument, and it will be taken as a victory by the other side. We're not just talking about people living their lives privately, having their own lifestyle and be let alone, live and let live. What we're talking about are activists, progressive activists that are pushing particular agendas. And if you affirm some form of this resolution, however you play with the language, you will be affirming that activist group and taking the opposite position of those who are claiming free speech under religious protections. So I urge this council to not take any action whatsoever. What you already said about on your ethics is one thing, but to go beyond that, to include civil rights that are manufactured civil rights, that are not the traditional racial and ethnic civil rights, is unfair to those people who have been fighting for civil rights on racial and ethnic grounds for years. I just think this is totally inappropriate. It would have never have come up if there wasn't religious free speech in this town, which is now trying to be silenced. So I appreciate you listening to me, and I appreciate you going to carefully reread that letter before you go into your next self-study.
James?
Evening, council mayor, city manager, chief. I'm wondering why nobody's talking about all the voicemails the pastor had on his phone threatening to burn down his house, and all the other voicemails. I haven't heard a word about that. Yeah, I'd like to give you a copy of this if somebody could hand it to the mayor. This is what real hate speech looks like. This is a transgender holding an AR-15 talking about kill Christ cucks. Which I assume are Christians. Behead Christ cucks, roundhouse kick a Christ cuck into the concrete, slam duck a Christ cuck baby into the trash can, crucify filthy Christ cucks, defecate in a Christ cuck's food, launch Christ cucks into the sun. The so-called pride community is pushing the indoctrination of children with these drag shows. Just because one was canceled doesn't mean anything. They're going on all over the place, and they're really pushing it on Humboldt County. Devil horns, dildos, it's not appropriate. The Humboldt Rainbow Connection has found out that we have a petition to ban all drag shows for anybody under 18. And that petition also calls for the resignation or recall of any county officials that are promoting these drag shows. And we're getting a lot of signatures on that. So what they did, the Humboldt Rainbow Connection found out about it, and they posted on Facebook that everybody that signs that petition, they want all their followers to know that their names and addresses are on there. Now, if we were to do that, they'd be running to the Human Rights Commission, saying, oh, protect us, protect us. It's completely ridiculous. Nobody's threatening anybody. They made a lie about me at the Jefferson Center. I was sitting on a bench minding my own business, and Les and Coscolino sent them after me, like 5 of them after me, posted me on Moscow's outhouse, and made me out saying I was doing terrorist threats, which is a total lie. I went to every vendor. I told them, I'm not against any of you. I'm not against gay people. I don't hate anybody. But pushing this on children is unacceptable, and we're not going to quit fighting against it. You can believe that. And, I mean, somebody yelling at a gay person, that's unacceptable. To me, they have no right to do that. You know, that's what I would call hate there. And what I showed you and gave you a copy of, that's hate. You can't cater to these pride community. They're pushing the indoctrination on our children of sexualized, inappropriate behavior. And I know a lot of you guys, you don't do internet. And I don't think you know what's going on. You ought to take a look and see what's really going on with this pride community and what they're doing to our kids. It's unacceptable. Thank you.
Chair Bob?
So very sad. Good council members. When we humans act out our hatreds in words and actions, we create consequences that are mean, horrific, and often tragic. Certainly, we all know this is true. Hating is something only humans do. Other species kill to feed or protect themselves to stay alive, but they do not hate. Hatred is a toxic state of mind unique to humankind, and hatred is found everywhere in our society, including. This is not to say, however, that we as citizens together in community cannot or should not make positive moral public statements about hateful behaviors. Skip has written a wise, I think, and comprehensive draft resolution that alters our perspective by simply changing the title of proposed resolution number 2023 from anti-hate to resolution of inclusion. It shifts the attitude of the entire text from anti to pro. The document thus becomes a significantly more positive declaration. In the draft, Councilman Jorgensen lists the many groups of people who are targets of hate in our society. I wish it were not necessary to create or even see such a list, but it is necessary because hatred by its very nature categorizes and chooses its targets. Hate simply ignores common shared humanity. As responsible citizens, we need to know who the vulnerable ones among us are, so that we may protect and embrace them. I ask the council members that they adopt Skip's draft resolution as it is written, and with the exact title. Let the city of Ferndale thus distinguish itself by stating that its citizens well understand the cruelty of hatred in all its flaws. But more importantly, that they aspire to live with others in fairness and kindness, welcoming into their midst any human being. This whole occasion is so sad. Thank you.
Where's the grandma?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you guys have already heard plenty from me. For the last 18 months, you've heard plenty from me. As Councilman Lund mentioned, we haven't been just dealing with this since January, but since June of 2021 is when it started for us, when a protest was launched outside of our church. So you've heard my comments, you have them on record. If you'd like to hear more about them, you can find them all online as well, including my 32-minute long critique of Councilman Jorgensen's boilerplate resolution. Tonight I want to share my condolences to you guys, because you're not career politicians, you're our neighbors. We know you, some of us know you better than others. Some of us are newer to town and don't know you hardly at all, but you are all still our neighbors. You stepped up to serve our city as servants, out of the kindness of your heart, out of a willingness to serve, out of perhaps a love to give back to the community that you love. As a servant myself, you being civil, me being ecclesial, I do understand your burden of service. I also understand, as you do, that that burden is amplified, unfortunately, when there is division among the people you serve. No one wants to see that. I suspect you already understand why George Washington said, even if you're not familiar with this quote, I would rather be on my farm than be the emperor of the world. I would rather be in my garden right now than here, dealing with this. That said, given the demographic of our city and the growing cultural division in the country, I don't see your time in office being particularly peaceful if we continue down this road. Not if every time I speak against sin, as is my job as a called and ordained minister of God's word, that's what I have been ordained to do, God's opponents pressure you to stand with them against the church. We're going to continue to repeat this cycle because I'm not going to stop. I can't, or I'll be defrauded. This is my job. As you may or may not know, my work is conducted according to Christ's command, out of love for my neighbor, which includes you guys. So please, heed my counsel. Acting according to human hubris and affirming any sin, take the LGBTQ part of this away. Any sin is openly defying the one true triune God. Remember, neighbors, you are not the final authority on what is sin or isn't sin. God retains that authority. He called you into your offices to be of service to Him for the good of all people, Christian and non-Christian alike. Going against His authority and becoming a terror to Christians in support of another group is evil in all manners of the word. I think we all would agree on that, according to Garibald's definition of hate. Thank you.
Thank you. Nadine?
There. Nobody's gonna like what I have to say. Okay, I don't know where mankind came up with this notion, other than mankind likes to play God. And they decide what is right and what is wrong. God Himself has told us through His words, if we're willing to listen, that He alone is not corrupt, but we are. So only He knows what is right and what is wrong. So many people seem to hate the idea of hate. But God Himself has told us that we are to hate. Now, who we hate, how we go about it, is not according to what Nadine thinks or what you think or anybody else thinks. It's about what God has said, who we are and how we are. He actually says in Psalms 15 that we will not tabernacle with him if we do not despise the vile. He also says that he himself, in Psalms 5, that he hates all workers of iniquity. So God himself does not love all the time. He also hates. So who are we to tell God we're not supposed to hate? He also said in Ecclesiastes, to everything there's a season, a time for every purpose. There's a time to love, and there's a time to hate. So we're supposed to go by God's wisdom, use discernment as to based on what he has said, who we are to hate, and how we are to go about it, and why. We can't just love everybody, because there's so many people, especially with this topic here, that these people are sexual deviants. I don't care about what a psychologist says, because he's not God. I don't even care what I say. But if God has said it, as a believer, I am to believe it. And he has said that this LGBTQFMP people, that they are sexually immoral deviants. They will not tabernacle with him. He says they will not make it into heaven. Even he tells believers, do not eat with another believer if they are immoral. So we as a people who love God, believe God, trust God, and again, not what any one of us says or thinks, but what God himself has said. Teaching hate is not a popular subject. You don't hear that from the pulpits very often at all. In fact, contemporary Christianity has fallen into this thing of love, 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 love is love, and we're supposed to love everybody. But that's ridiculous. We're not supposed to. There are evil people out there. There are sexual deviants. This group, in particular, has shown their aggression towards children. So I think that should tell us everything we need to know. Anyway, I hope you really seriously think about it. It's not something you should legislate.
Donnie? Hello, my name is Donnie. I'm not a religious man. I'm far from being a Christian. However, I support Pastor Bramley's position entirely, regardless of my lack of faith. See, I'm so sick and tired of the local media dictating the terms of the narrative in this county. And I'm so sick and tired of seeing good men and women kowtow to a political order that is propped up entirely by 5 lousy websites. I'm also sick and tired of hearing leftists conflate bigotry and racism in the same breath that they're using the term gaslighting. When he rhetorically combined unconnected events to make it seem like anyone who is critical of the LGBTQ community and their behaviors are just hate-filled bigots that call people faggots and support blackface or racism is absolute pinnacle of gaslighting. It's gaslighting crystallized. The resolution itself is gaslighting the members of this community who stand against drag shows for kids. It's not about representation. It's not about inclusivity. I heard a speaker speak of protecting vulnerable. Who is not vulnerable more than children, and what is more vulnerable than their innocence? But I digress. Here we are in Ferndale, California, of all places, and the city council has read a resolution with a record that is both an insult and injury to the people. All this resolution does is lend political credibility to the idea that the LGBTQ community can host and promote drag events for kids with impunity. And that the good mothers and fathers who overcome the fear of being canceled, who are standing in solidarity against this absolute travesty, this resolution just lends political credibility to the idea that they are just hateful bigots, that they support blackface, that they are racist, that they are, and I are, part of some nameless local hate group. It's absolutely preposterous. It would be a laugh if there wasn't a mob of folks who take it seriously and hate me, my publication, and those who stand with us for our convictions. You see, I'm one of those fathers having 3 boys of my own. I've been married to the woman of my dreams who is actually born a girl and is a real woman for 14 years. We homeschool our boys specifically to shield them from the destructive and borderline predatory nature of what we oppose here, which is sadly working its way into the public school system. So when I hear our opponents in the local woke media and the LGBTQ activists they support say that those who protest or are critical of drag shows for kids are bigots inflicting their community with hate speech, it makes me wonder what you guys all think of the drag show that was put on by Heidi Vincenzanelli over at the Jefferson Community Center in Eureka this past October. I was there. I filmed the entire thing. There's been a media blackout on it. It's amazing. Do you think it's okay for minors and toddlers from 12 to toddlers, years old, 12 years old, being in an audience with adult males dressed in sexualized costumes, twerking for cash tips, some children even handing dancers cash tips themselves? Is that something that you guys want to write in your resolution? Because that's what you're saying you support. Is this something you guys want to throw into your resolution? I have another question. How many protests have occurred outside of adult-only drag shows in Humboldt? The answer is 0. That is the crux of the entire thing. It's not about anything, it's about kids. How is it that the cannabis community cannot use images, colors, and certain themes on their products because they target children, but those same exact images, colors, and themes can be used by the LGBTQ community to have drag shows and for all ages, and they call them family friendly. It's not family friendly. I have an hour long of footage on my website. We have a petition online calling for the end of drag events for kids in Humboldt County. There's people signing it like crazy. Every signature goes to the Humboldt Board of Supervisors. If you guys want me to include your emails on there, I can. Thank you so much.
Ashley?
Yep.
Hello again. I appreciate the council's statements on the matter. I understand why you might be hesitant on moving forward on this resolution. This is a national and controversial issue. The marquee at St. Mark's consists of only a short sentence at a time, leaving a lot to be interpreted or misinterpreted without actually talking to the pastor about what his intended meaning is. Something that people in opposition to this messaging have openly admitted that they have not or will not do. Nationally, a recent trend, speech itself has been equated to physical violence. Words can be hurtful, but the two acts are not interchangeable. People's feelings can get hurt when they hear things they disagree with, but in no way should this be used to validate actual physical violence. Unfortunately, this is something that has recently occurred in the tragic Tennessee Christian school shooting, and more locally, San Francisco SFU, where swimmer Riley Gaines was assaulted by trans protesters during her speech. And she was boarded up in a room or something, and SFU came out totally in support of the people who were assaulting her. Opinions are not facts. Speech is not violence. And saying the two are the same through the lens of equity sets a dangerous precedence. Precedents where literal acts of violence are now being attempted to be claimed under the umbrella of free speech. The best thing to do here is nothing. People will always have disagreements. As long as there's no physical violence, like with the St. Mark Marquee, the First Amendment has already defined the result of this decision.
John Richards?
Good evening. First of all, I want to say that I represent the congregation of St. Mark's Lutheran Church.
Speak into the mic.
Sorry. I represent the congregation of St. Mark's Lutheran Church, LCMS, here in Ferndale. The letter I'm about to read is from the congregation and not Reverend Bramwell. After the reading, I will submit the letter to the clerk to be entered into the official record of tonight's meeting. Dear Honorable Mayor and City Council members, this letter is in response to the resolution proposed by Councilman Alan Skip Jorgensen in the City Council meeting of February 15, 2023, to address inclusion and acceptance. This resolution of inclusion does nothing to enhance the community well-being. In fact, it does the opposite. It defines the city council as leaders who do not embrace all the citizens of the community. It speaks to those who are members of several innumerable classes, which are contrasted with others who purport to be full of prejudice, bigotry, and hatred. Martin Luther King Jr. taught that persecuting any American is an assault on the rights and freedoms of all Americans. Enumerating specific classes of Americans in a resolution eliminates other Americans from consideration. It is an assault on all Americans and the basic principles of freedom. Does the council not believe all men are created equal, as is stated in the Declaration of Independence? Turning the Ferndale City Council or any employee of the city into speech police is a dangerous precedent. What authority does the government have to enforce a resolution? Who decides what constitutes an offense or hateful speech? Will citizens, business, schools, religious or organizations be monitored? How will the speech police determine a violation of a resolution? The city government does not need another resolution for government relation. If the resolution is taken a step further and becomes an ordinance, it wouldn't even be enforceable or defensible in a court of law, as it is clear abrogation of the First Amendment of rights. Their right is to protect our rights and uphold the Constitution of the United States and to manage the administrative tasks delegated to them for the good of all citizens of Ferndale. To quote President George Washington in his farewell address, of all the dispositions of habits which lead to political prosperity, religion, morality are indispensable supports. This is what the council should support for the good of all citizens of Ferndale. The issue at hand cannot be resolved by resolution. It is a disagreement of what constitutes love and what constitutes hate. It is a complete difference in worldview. We know where we stand. We will keep preaching God's gospel, loving our neighbors here in Ferndale and teaching them about objective truth. No resolution is going to change this. We, the members of St. Mark's Lutheran Church, urge you not to pursue the resolution of inclusion. And this letter will be signed by members of the church, not Reverend
We have one left here, but must be a guest speaker because there's no name on it. So is there somebody that signed up to speak that didn't put their name on?
I did not, but I doesn't speak that name. Hi, I'm Alice. I've worked here since I was 10. I'm here for 40 years. I went to Ferndale High School in 1986, and this is what it was like, and this is what I lived in this town that long ago. I wasn't gay, I was just a weird kid. And I underwent so much torment that I wanted to kill myself. And just hearing this, when I heard the story, I was like, are we allowed to clap only for him? I don't understand. And I'm just gonna say, I know he's got freedom of speech, and the one thing that brought me here tonight was on the 28th of March, his little board out there said City Resolution 2023 will formally set Ferndale against God. And I mean, there have been way worse. Abortion is murder, Black Lives Matter, anything. But what I took umbrage with was that he said Ferndale. And I want him to know, you don't speak for all of us. You speak for a very small subset of people. And I think it's awful that June is coming up, Pride Month, his favorite month, to put out his signs, the most hateful things he can say in 50 characters or less. And I want to not be associated with them. And I would ask if he could just take Ferndale off the sign, because there's gonna be tourists coming in, driving around, they're gonna see that, and they're gonna be like, what, I hate Bill Town, and they're gonna leave. So at least think about it from that aspect. We're gonna be losing money. I'm sorry, I wasn't intending to speak, but it's scary to me that this is even an issue. Someone can take that out of context, and someone can get hurt, or worse, and he knows that. That's all I have to say. I would like, I don't know how you do it formally, but if you could just ask him. I don't want to be affiliated with his church. Please do not say it affects Ferndale as a whole. It affects him and his congregation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Christina Chapman. I wasn't prepared to say anything tonight, but listening to everything, I was moved to come up here. First of all, things on the marquee, they're all not hateful, they're out of love, and it's all honest love. Secondly, I would like to ask the city council to consider a resolution protecting all churches and their clergy and pastors for their vocations. And I'd just like you to consider that in a resolution. And when that one's done, I'll have another one for you. Have a good day.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Amelia Burrows. I have lived here since probably the early 1980s. I live in town, I work in town, and it occurs to me that when my kids and I talk about the Constitution and the history of our country, we talk about an idea that silence is amplification. And when you are silent, you amplify a message. And my fear, as a citizen here, is that the silence of the city council leads to the silence of this community, and it says a lot about us that is just not true. So I want you to consider that your silence on this matter actually amplifies a message that is not in the spirit of Ferndale truly. Thank you.
Okay. Good. No more comments. I want to thank everyone for their input, their comments, and we will be having a special meeting, study session to come up with something where we can finalize this issue for the best